Hi, this is Kathy from MummyTravels and I am back with the last of my 12 travel tips of Christmas. If you're watching this in midsummer, the tips should all still apply perfectly well. It's just a little bit dark today, so I'm slightly envious of you watching it in boiling midsummer. Today's tips are all about visiting London's Natural History Museum with young kids. It's based on one of the most popular posts I've written for the blog MummyTravels, all about one of my early visits to the museum with my daughter when she was a toddler. All the tips still pretty much apply up to about probably the age of 5, I reckon at least, and some of them will apply to London's Science Museum, the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum as well. So if you're interested in visiting any of those, keep watching. Some of this will all apply to you. Tip 1. Check out the unpopular entrances. Natural History Museum, if you go in the Exhibition Road entrance, there's almost always less of a queue than if you go in the exciting main entrance. It does mean that you don't get to go in and see either, well, Dippy the Diplodocus at the moment, or there's going to be a huge blue whale in there soon, but you can just walk your way around and you won't have to wait as long. The same goes for some of the other museums. If you go in the back entrance of the British Museum, which says it's for groups, but you can go in perfectly well if you're on your own as well, you almost certainly won't get any queues which you might get out the front. Tip 2. If you're planning to visit the dinosaurs, and honestly, why would you go to the Natural History Museum if you're not planning to see the dinosaurs? If you think it's going to be busy, get a timed ticket. So that's weekends, that's school holidays, throughout the year. It's really worth getting that, and you won't have to stand in a huge line. If you're visiting on a wet Wednesday in November outside the school holidays, you'll probably be fine though. Which brings me on to tip 3. Go in the morning if you can. Again, it makes sense. If you don't have to go at the busy times, don't. These are hugely popular museums. Skip the queues and have fewer crowds and you'll have a much better time. Obviously, if you have kids at school or younger kids who've got siblings who are at school, or you just happen to be visiting London in the holiday period, not a lot you can do about that. So the earlier that you get there, the better. And that again applies pretty much across the board of all of London's museums. Chances are, if you've got young kids, you're going to be awake anyway. You might as well get up and go to the museum before everyone else who's having a lie-in. My next tip is make a plan. All of the museums, including the Natural History Museum, are huge. If you're visiting with a toddler particularly, there's only so much that they are going to be able to tolerate, however good a time they're having. You know, these collections are massive. You'd struggle to get around the whole lot in a day as an adult, let alone as a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old. But if you look on the websites, most of the museums, including the Natural History Museum, have maps up, they have plans, they have information on what the collections are, how it's laid out, and so on. The Natural History Museum actually charges for maps, so if you can print yourself off a PDF, which is available for free on the website, you've also saved yourself £1. My next tip is to check out the activities. A lot of these museums, the Natural History Museum in particular, is obviously so child friendly. You know, dinosaurs, animals, all this stuff is amazing for kids. But it's great still to have something to focus your visit around. The Natural History Museum has Explorer backpacks, which you can get. You normally have to leave a deposit in any of the museums for these, but they're really, really worth doing. The British Museum also has trails for under 5s that you can follow, looking for different colours and different shapes, which will take you around some of the different galleries. The V&A, for example, has an absolutely brilliant little activity trail for under 5s where you're hunting different animals. If it's all starting to get a bit overwhelming, the Natural History Museum also has a lovely garden. You go through the Darwin Centre in the orange zone to get to it. It's open just sort of in the main spring to autumn over the summer months from April to October. You can actually still visit, I think, outside those times, but you have to make a special appointment. And let's face it, it's probably a bit less fun in the middle of November than it is in the middle of May. tip is don't miss the Investigate gallery. It's tucked away in the basement, so you almost certainly wouldn't stumble across it accidentally, but it's got loads of things in that kids can actually pick up and handle, which is a lot more fun than just being able to look at odds and ends through glass cases. If you're visiting on a weekday though, it's reserved for school groups until 2:30, so make that one of the last things you do in your visit. If you're visiting at weekends or in school holidays though, it's the other way round. It doesn't open till 11, which is a bit later than the main museum, but again, it's worth getting there early and you can get your hands on all kinds of exciting things, from meteorites to shells to who knows what else. So I hope those tips are useful to you. London's museums are amazing. I mean, I've lived here for 15 years. I've been visiting the museum since I was a child. I remember seeing the Diplodocus skeleton when I was, I don't know, probably not much older than my daughter. So I definitely advise going, but hopefully that will help you get the most out of your visit. If you have a look on the blog as well, MummyTravels.com, there is a separate set of tips for the British Museum, for the Science Museum, and after our visit to the V&A this week, I'm off to do another set of tips for that as well. So I will put the links below, or just go to the blog and have a bit of a rummage. I hope you've really enjoyed the travel tips. I've had quite a bit of fun doing some of them, even if it turns out I have a very serious face on camera, but there you go. So if you have enjoyed them, you can check out the rest of the set of 12 in the playlist, also below, or you can subscribe if you've enjoyed everything that you've seen, and I hope you carry on watching some more of my videos.